Hey, I got a question for you. Are you an active B2B consultant? Are you an experienced professional who is looking to start into the consulting industry? Or are you a student wondering whether or not starting a career in consulting is worth it? If yes to any of those questions, you are a great fit to have a 15 minutes free coaching call with me. And during that call, we will be looking at your career and life goals, as well as your current and past experiences. And we will also be able to figure out whether or not we can together build a roadmap towards building your desired career with your desired lifestyle. So don't hesitate to get in touch with me at consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. COACHING. Consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. Now, let's go and listen to the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Consulting Lifestyle Podcast to Gary Ross. Gary, how are you?
I am great, Dio. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great as well. I must say that here in Montreal, the spring has really started, so I'm feeling very good.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Here in Chicago, it started and then it stopped. It
oh,
went backwards. So I hope it turns back around again.
okay, yeah. Hopefully for you. And yes, we will not necessarily talk about the weather, but about consulting, and in your case, Gary, about communication, effective communication.
Yeah.
So I would like you to, for the audience, to share the highlights of your career story.
Sure. Well, I'm a workplace communication trainer and coach and consultant. So I work with businesses, individuals, and also teams as well to help them communicate better at work so they can persuade and inform and influence others. I have e-learning courses online that are available. I also deliver live sessions either in person or virtually, and I also do custom training as well, working for a client right now, or developing rather some custom e-learning classes for a client right now. So that's all a lot of fun. I began my career getting out of college as a journalist, actually, working in radio and television for, well, about 1 year in radio and about 3 years in television, TV news. And after that, decided to get into communications, got into media relations, and then eventually started working for companies in their corporate communications departments in media relations. As my career progressed and I got more responsibility, I got more exposure to internal communications and really got passionate about that because I see it as a way to not only help organizations and businesses, but also to help individuals as they're walking in the door every day or turning on their computers every day, to have them have a better understanding of how they fit in, how the work that they do contributes to the overall success of the organization, help them understand what change is going on around them, and so forth. So that's what I really enjoy about that. I led communications departments for three large companies here in the Chicago area. And about 9 years ago, started my consultancy, working mostly on internal communications. Now I'm exclusively on internal communications, mostly focused again on training and coaching, and also speaking as well. I'm speaking at several conferences on communication in the first half of this year, 2023, and hope to continue that on into the second half of the year as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I wish you. I wish that to you, and you are also speaking maybe in another context, which is more a podcast interview right now. So yeah, your focus is more on internal communication, and you have created e-learning services.
Yes.
So where I am a little bit curious, because it's two different things, if I can say it like that. So the ability to build a course and deliver it virtually, and the communication itself. So how does that process go? If we talk about the e-learning, are you creating videos completely on your own, or are you collaborating to create the content that you deliver to your clients?
Yeah, no, I put it together on my own, and it's kind of fun because I get to go back to my TV and radio experience, working with video and editing video and music and graphics and all that kind of stuff. So it's much easier to do now with the technology than it was back when I was in when I was in TV. We won't get into how ancient that stuff was, but it's so much with the technology now. It's so much easier to do it and do it in the way you would like, and the way the clients would like as well. So I have a studio here in my office, and I'm able to record video and then edit it together. I write all my scripts. I have them up on a teleprompter and go from there. And all of the material is based on my 30 years of experience in corporate communications, things that I know that work for people, worked for me. I talk also about some mistakes that I've made and things and some pitfalls that people should avoid as well. So it's been really fun putting that all together.
That's great. And how has the passion for internal communication got ignited in you?
Yeah, when I got into communication, I was working mostly on external communication, so media relations, helping companies get stories written about them in the news media. But as I progressed in my career and got more responsibility, I got more exposure to internal communications. And what really appeals to me with that is the ability to help individuals who are working in an organization. Because by helping an organization communicate more clearly, more concisely, more authentically with its employees, the company gets an engaged workforce, and the individuals in the organization have a much better understanding of what it is every day that they're doing and how it connects to the greater picture. So they can then go home and talk to their families or their friends and say, hey, here's what I did today and here's how it contributed. And so what I work on now is not only helping organizations do that, but also helping teams and helping individuals be better communicators themselves, to show up professionally, to eliminate filler words like and and things like that. Now, we all do those things. We can't get rid of them entirely, but I help people find out some of the root causes of why they might do that and help reduce that a little bit and do it in a supportive way, not in a way that says, aha, I heard you say 27 times when you gave that presentation and you shouldn't be doing that. I don't believe in doing it in that way. I like to be a little more supportive in the work that I do. So there's things like that, helping people work on delivering bad news or leading difficult conversations.
Yep.
And what's interesting about communication is, in general, is that people, when they think about it, and they think about it in what I think is the right way, and I help people think about how they go about their communication. When they do that, everybody has the ability to do it. It's generally walking in. It's a confidence issue. It's not a skill issue or an ability. And once we show people, hey, here are some of the ways to think about your communication. Here are some of the things to think about as you're communicating. Then it kind of comes together for them, and they become better communicators pretty quickly. Like anything, it can take some time, and it's a journey to get perhaps to your best potential on it. But you see some pretty quick wins.
Yeah.
And it's because it's more of like a confidence issue. People don't know what to say. People don't know how to say it. And we can point people in that direction pretty quickly.
Okay, because on the topic of difficult conversations, maybe talking about bad news for the company or for an individual, or just arguing, let's say, over a topic in which there are disagreements. How have you got some examples, without giving like client names, but how can you help people unlock that ability to have those difficult conversations? Because it's in general, it is very difficult.
Yeah. So specifically with difficult conversations, and I'll talk a little more broadly about communication in general. With difficult conversations, I break it down into, all right, here's how to prepare for it. Here's what to do in the actual conversation. And here's how to follow up on a difficult conversation, because a lot of times that's really important as well. And with difficult conversations, it comes down to empathy and trying to understand a little bit about what it might be on the other side of that difficult conversation and what that person might be feeling. Now, that doesn't mean you should, if you're having a difficult conversation with somebody, apologize for that conversation. You should not, because if the conversation is happening ostensibly for a good business reason, then let's not apologize for that business reason. So don't apologize. And also it shows a little bit of wavering or weakness perhaps in your position as well. And that's a time where you want to be firm, but also, again, being empathetic. So we want to say things like, I understand this might be difficult for you. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between saying that and saying, I understand how you feel. And that's something that we probably shouldn't be saying, because you really don't understand how exactly how an individual feels, because
Yeah.
the frame of reference or some experiences that that person is bringing to the conversation, some other things that are going on in that person's personal life, and so forth. So you can never understand exactly how somebody feels, but you can understand that a person, this might be a difficult experience for the person. So there are some things to think about along those lines, but really it boils down to empathy. And then
Mhm.
when when I do a course on that, I go through some specific steps on what to do in difficult conversations and so forth.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And to go back on the topic of communication in general, you do have a framework, like a set of rules that you apply at Insight Coms. Can you explain them?
Yeah, so I call it my three number one rules of communication. And I say it's three number one rules because they're all tied for number one, because they're all as equally as important. And so number one is everything communicates. Everything communicates. No matter what you do or say or write, you're communicating in that way as well, but also even in nonverbal even in some nonverbal signs that communicates. Even when you're not communicating, that communicates. If you go away for a while and decide that you want to stop communicating and so forth, that actually sends a signal to your audience that maybe, they might think that maybe you're hiding something, or that there's something going on that you may not want to talk about.
Mhm.
So that can be one example of an action that actually communicates when you don't think you're communicating.
Mhm.
So everything communicates. Another number one rule of communication is know your audience. And we touched on that a little bit when we were talking about difficult conversations. But understanding as much as you can about your audience, what motivates them, what they care about, what they want from you, and so forth. As much of their frame of reference and their experience as you can imagine. So as you can understand, so that when you're communicating to them, you're understanding not only how they might react to something, but also, okay, here's what I have in mind for what I want to achieve with my communication, and and knowing what I know about my audience, how can I phrase what I want to communicate to those folks in a way that will actually move them to the action that I desire on that. And then the third one is I call tell them a story. And that goes back to storytelling.
Yeah.
It's as human beings, we're wired to respond to stories. Ever since the first caveman drawings in prehistoric times, our brains are wired to respond to stories. They draw us in. And if we're looking to, again, move somebody to action or capture their imagination, it's not it's hard to do that with just a dry set of facts. Instead, we want to cast it in the form of a story where we're saying, okay, here's where we are now, here's where we're going, here's how we're going to get there, and here's what it's going to look like when we get there. So those four steps: where are we now, where are we going, how are we going to get there, and what's it going to look like when we get there. When we answer those four questions, that gives us a progression, that gives us a story. It also winds up incorporating some of the key classic storytelling elements, like a conflict or a quest, something that we're seeking along the way. So you can take, and I've got a framework for this that I talk about in some of my training and some of my e-learning as well, where you can take some of the driest piece of business communication and turn it into a story that has the same framework as, say, The Wizard of Oz or Star Wars,
Mhm.
and get people to follow along with it. So it's an age-old tool, formula, whatever you want to call it, that has captured minds for eons. And we can use that in the workplace too.
Yeah, I haven't seen that a lot actually. The putting internal communication, even important communication, in a story, in the way, in the frame of a story. So yeah, I think that is that could be very effective. And in terms of, you said that you work with organizations and individuals. Is there a certain type of individuals you are working with?
Oh, it's a range. There are people who, for example, I'm going to be doing some coaching a little bit later today with an executive who's in charge of a big new expansion project for for his company, and he's looking for ways to bring people along on this new change. So we'll talk about ways that he can do that. When I work with organizations, I'm part of their learning and development curriculum or their corporate university, and we've got classes and cohorts that come in, and we talk about a lot of these principles as well. And again, because you can have some early quick wins on this, they notice the difference pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and in terms of because in the audience there are people, some maybe not many communications expert, but maybe many people that are finance or supply chain or whichever specialty experts, but they may ignore or they may neglect, let's say, the importance of communication. How have you seen how effective communication has helped professionals advance in their career or in their business, those individuals?
Well, to your point, you can kind of see sometimes it's in the news when it's not done well. You hear stories about companies laying people off by email or what have you. You see things that are done that alienate groups of people, and what does that do? That then winds up alienating the employee base, and then productivity goes down. And then the value of the company goes down and customer service goes down. And so there's a lot riding on communication, but there's not a lot that needs to be done to make things better on that as well. It's a minimal investment that's necessary for something that can have a very big difference on what happens. So for example, let's say you've got an acquisition. Let's say one company is buying another for, I don't know, let's say $100 million. And they're buying not only the equipment, but the customer base and also the ability for employees to produce at the same level. Well, in the course of those sorts of transactions, there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. People don't necessarily know what's going to be happening and so forth. So in the company that's being acquired, it can kind of rock your world a little bit. It can be a little unsettling. But if the communication to those folks is not done well, then you can have a group of angry and confused and disengaged folks, and all of a sudden the productivity of this acquired company then starts going down. Yep. So you just bought something for $100 million, but if the productivity is slowing, you've just lost a ton of your investment right off the top.
Yeah.
So, but to invest in good communication and in ways to counteract what I was just talking about, if you invest in good communication, it's a very, very small amount considering that would need to be invested, considering how much you can lose if you don't do it at all.
Yeah, and it's very current. I mean, in the late 2022 and early 2023, we have seen a lot of massive layoffs of big tech companies that have laid off several employees. And this could have been, we're not going into the why, but this could be linked also to the pandemic. And I'm wondering for you in your business, because you started your business 9 years ago, so I think about 2014. How has the pandemic, that 2020, 2022 period, how has that affected your business?
It affected it because, like in anything, a lot of clients and potential clients were a little nervous about spending money. Nobody knew it was going to happen. Things would change almost on an hourly basis back then, especially at the beginning of it. So that was a little bit tough in that regard. But I was also it also gave me some time to do a lot of the writing and the producing of the e-learning classes as well. So that was a blessing there.
Okay. In that sense, and with the fact that more people are working remotely, you haven't seen more demand on that. I mean, in that aspect, like my team was always next to me. I could see them. Now they are behind the screens. How can I stay effective in my communication? Was it that the type of question you are receiving? Or?
Yeah, I mean, some of on remote work, yes, absolutely. There were some folks that communication was an even bigger mystery to folks when they were put in remote situations like that. So they did ask. There were also some times though where we saw some of the same communication principles manifest themselves that we've always had, but they manifest themselves in different ways. So, for example, when I said everything communicates, there was a group that was entirely remote that I was working with. It was an IT department, actually, and they were getting ready to make some pretty big changes in their department. And so the executives had been off in some meetings trying to work through some of these changes and figure out what they would be, but
Mhm.
they weren't in a position to communicate them at all yet. So
Yeah.
it was all very hush hush. Even though the team was in a remote situation, they could go online and see the executive schedules, and they were all booked up for a day at a time or a half a day at a time. And they got a sense, hey, something's going on here. And so in the past, where we might have all been in an office and we've seen, a lot of closed door offices or closed doors to conferences and blinds drawn and that sort of thing, that stuff doesn't go away just because you're remote. On the remote, if your calendar is available, people will see that, yeah, you're booked up in meetings, and that something might be going on. So that's something to consider. And because of that, actually, we had to come up with some communication in the meantime, because there were some rumors that were starting to go around, and we had to counteract that. So it's the old phrase, it's the same but different. It's some of the same principles, really, because we're all still human beings, we're just communicating differently.
Yeah, yeah, and I get another maybe another question or topic related to that internal communication. You have or you can help professionals also building relationship with the C-suite of their company. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and what I have found has had worked for me is to distinguish yourself in a way that, and working with senior executives, that most people don't or won't do for some reason. And I think this still sticks around in the business world. People just get nervous, get intimidated by a CEO or a C-suite executive, and we don't remember all the time that they're people too, who on a weekend they go and spend time with their families and do things that they like, and so forth. And so one of the things that I've done, and I know it sounds a little goofy, but it makes a big difference, is on a Monday, if you happen to have a meeting with a senior executive, ask them, how was your weekend?
Hmm.
Most people don't do that because they're afraid to strike up a conversation for whatever reason with a CEO or a senior executive. But
Yeah.
they like talking about their weekends just like everybody else. Now, their weekends might be a lot different than, they may be on a private jet or a yacht or whatever, but it's still the weekend, and it's still stuff that they do and that they enjoy doing. And so engaging people on that kind of level, trying to find that line where, you're still respectful of the situation and the dynamic, but by distinguishing yourself and trying to appeal to people a little bit more on a personal level, you stick out. And now that allows you, and you distinguish yourself, and that allows you to, I think, be seen as somebody that they can trust, that they can speak to. And all of a sudden, when you're meeting with them, you're not just talking about the subject of the meeting, you're talking about some other things too. I've been in situations where we'll start talking about communications, and then the conversation will go on for a while, and then it hits me. It's like, we're not talking about communication anymore. We're talking about something else that this senior leader is mulling over, and they want an outside opinion. And all of a sudden, because I'm communicating in this distinctive way and having this relationship in a distinctive way, they're open to talking to me about it.
Yeah.
And that's what can distinguish yourself. A lot of times in communications, we talk about getting that seat at the table. And I think the seat at the table is very important and is great to have. But what we really want is the seat across the desk when we're one on one in the office with a senior leader, having those conversations as a trusted advisor.
Yeah, great point. Great point. It's even, yeah, you get, it's a deeper relationship, and you have built such a trust that is so big that CEO, that executive will actively listen to what you suggest, but will only listen to you. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is a great point. So your company has almost 10 years. So how do you see the evolution of your company and your industry in the future? Let's say 5 years.
Oh, wow. Well,
Maybe it's
yeah.
far.
No, it's exciting because I think communication is you talk about the pandemic. The pandemic showed the value really in plain sight of good internal communication and workplace communication, because we were all starving for information at every turn. And all of a sudden, people were turning to us and say, hey, we've got to get the word out about this, or we have to reassure people about that, and so forth. So I think that in kind of a weird way helped show the value of internal communication. And now I think it's up to folks in the business world to say, all right, we can communicate well internally and with each other in a crisis, but let's see what happens when we can be more thoughtful about it when it's not a crisis, and still have some pretty great results on that. So I think we're starting to see where that's happening. There's another dynamic, and I don't understand really why this is. There are some cultural differences involved and so forth. But if you look at the state of internal communication or workplace communication in the UK versus the US and Canada, the UK is about 10 years ahead in terms of how well they do it, in terms of the professional development that's available, some of the other training that's available for people in college and university and early stages in their career. The internal communication departments are much more built out over there, and I think there's just a greater value in that. So if we can, those of us over here on this side of the pond can learn a little bit more on what they're doing and emulate that and use that as an example, I think there's a lot of runway for how we can do things, both here, if you're a professional communicator, but also if you're just in any part of the business looking for ways to communicate better with your team. The UK really gives us some good examples of how to do it right.
Okay. I really didn't know that the UK was so far in advance on that topic. One thing also I would like to talk about with you is the fact that you do consulting, but you also do speaking. Do you do that necessarily at conferences or for private corporation or private corporation events?
Yeah, both. So I'm doing a lot of speaking at conferences for the first half of this year in North America. I've got just in the first 6 months of the year, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, a couple in Orlando, Toronto, and so forth, in different conferences. What I have done so far with private companies is mostly more like training instead of speaking, but that is something actually that I'd like to do more of. So if anybody out there is looking for somebody to come in and talk about communication to a leadership meeting or anything like that, that's a lot of my training is easily adaptable to a keynote speech, and that's definitely something that I want to be doing more of in the coming years.
Okay, excellent. And how in communication, how do you try to stay current? Do you train yourself, or do you read some books? Do you have some resources to advise? For sure, there is your resource that you create. That's for sure. But you yourself, how do you?
Well, there's a great community of internal communication and workplace communication folks who are out there talking about a lot of great ideas on how to do things. So I think a simple Google search or perusing LinkedIn, hopefully you'll find me, but hopefully you'll find there's a lot of others out there as well that do a great job. I also pay attention to the news and business news in particular, because there are cases of when companies get it right, and more often than not, though, the ones that make it into the news are the ones that screw it up. and you sit there and you're like, well, what were they thinking? Or the communications people in those businesses were clearly fighting a losing battle with some executives and so forth who wanted to do it a different way. It's painful. It's even more painful when you know that there are good communications people in these organizations, and you know that they were pushing for the right way, and just sometimes you fight the good fight, but there's only so much you can do. But that's where that's where you can, because you can talk all the time about theory, which is good, and ideas and so forth. But when you see it in practice, and when you see it, how it can benefit or hurt a company in terms of employee turnover and just flat out and or company valuation, like we talked about earlier, or just simple revenue, you can see that when people screw this up, it costs big time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm out there trying to do is help folks, not only for the sake of their organizations, but also for the sake of the folks who are in those organizations, so they can have a good place to work.
Okay, excellent. And maybe last question for you, Gary. Consulting. So you do consulting and consulting lifestyle. What does that mean to you?
It mean to me, it's all about making a difference. I learned early on in my communication or in my consulting career rather that I wanted to go in and I wanted to totally fix something. And then I realized pretty quickly, nah, you can't really totally fix something in most cases. But if it's better after I've worked there for a while and worked on it for a while and the assignment or the work ends, if it's better than when I started, then that's a win. And that's what really energizes me, is being able to make a difference for an organization and for its people. So when I look at the work, the opportunities that I have before me, that's really the number one thing that I think about is, this something where I can make a difference? And hopefully it is. And when I do, at the end of the day, that's what's really fulfilling for me.
Okay, excellent, excellent answer. So, thanks very much. And if people would like to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so 2 websites. So the first one is my main website, which is www.insidecoms.com, INSIDE comms, COMMS.com. And then the e-learning site is plus insidecoms.com. And that's where a lot of the training stuff is as well. And then you can always pop me an email, gary.ross@insidecoms.com, and happy to chat about communications and helping folks move forward.
Yeah, excellent. We will also put the links that you have mentioned in our show notes. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with you, thank you, Gary, to provide us with this insight into the world of communication and the importance of internal communications in business. So thanks very much, and we talk again soon.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Take care.
Take care. Thank you for listening to the Consulting Lifestyle Podcast. If you have enjoyed the episode, leave a review on iTunes or one of your preferred podcasting platform. And if you want to further our relationship, please join our community. Our community is available at consultinglifestyle.fm/community. Looking forward to keep in touch with you.